Welcome, everybody. I think it's a good afternoon for most of us, but it may be good morning for a few of us here. It is so good to have you at the 2023 movement meeting. It's so good to see a bunch of familiar faces and many new faces as well. As we begin, we would love to see who is in the room today. So please chat in, and also if you'd like to change your Zoom name to include your name, pronouns, role, and location. And before we begin, we have Spanish interpretation. So I want to pass it to Diego, our interpreter, for instructions.
Sounds good. Thanks, David. Hi, everyone. My name is Diego Pons. I am going to keep my camera off just because of connectivity issues, and I'll give the instructions in English and then I'll repeat it in Spanish. Así que hola a todos y a todas. Voy a comenzar con instrucciones en inglés y luego las repito en español. So Diego Pons here with the CLC, the Community Language Cooperative. Thank you for inviting us and making this space to create language justice so people can participate and engage in the language of their heart, the language that you feel most comfortable in. We'll use simultaneous interpretation in English and in Spanish today. After I say this in English and in Spanish, at that moment, we'll start the interpretation. Once interpretation is on, you'll be able to see a globe icon that says interpretation there in the bottom right-hand corner of your computer screen. I'll ask you at that moment to please select your globe icon and please select your preferred language. And then if you happen to be joining the meeting on your cell phone or your tablet, you'll instead be looking for the more button or the three dots button to select your preferred language this other way. So if you're not fully bilingual, I strongly encourage people to select the preferred language so you can use the interpretation in case anyone were to speak in the opposite language. And if you are bilingual, then at that point, you can just feel free to listen to everyone in their original language. Once you do decide to select a language channel, you can always check the original audio if you would like to do so, to not have to hear both languages at the same time. And as always, just a special reminder, please pay attention to the speed in which you're speaking. You just have to speak at a conversational pace like I'm doing right now. You don't need to speak super slowly for me. And just please make sure you don't pick up your reading speed. So thank you so much for that. Buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Mi nombre es Diego Pons. Estoy aquí hoy de parte de la Cooperativa Comunitaria de la Justicia del Lenguaje, el CLC, y gracias por tenernos aquí hoy y comprometerse a servir a la justicia del lenguaje. Eso significa que queremos crear un espacio para que todos puedan participar e involucrarse en el idioma de su corazón, simplemente el idioma en el que todas las personas se sientan más cómodas. Vamos a continuar hoy utilizando la interpretación simultánea aquí en Zoom, en inglés y en español. Cuando yo termine de decir esto, se va a activar la interpretación y ya cuando esté activada la interpretación, usted va a poder ver ese icono del globo de la Tierra que dirá interpretación allí abajo en la derecha de su pantalla. Seleccione por favor ese icono del globo de la Tierra cuando aparezca en su pantalla y por favor seleccione su idioma preferido. Pero si usted está asistiendo hoy a la reunión en su celular o en su tableta, por favor, busque la opción que dice More, que quiere decir más, o posiblemente el botón de 3 puntos para que pueda seleccionar su idioma preferido de esta otra manera. Y si usted no es completamente bilingüe, le voy a aconsejar que seleccione su idioma preferido para que pueda utilizar interpretación cuando alguien está hablando en el otro idioma. Si usted sí es bilingüe, se puede sentir y escuchar a todos hoy en su idioma original. Y eso es todo. Muchas gracias. So we're ready to get started.
Thank you. So Trisha, you can turn on interpretation now. All right. You can see the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. Excellent. All right, thank you, everyone. And I forgot to introduce myself. I am David Putabarat. I am the Partnerships Director here at NFSN. Pronouns he, him. It is good to see you all here at the movement meeting. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that it's sometimes hard holding.
This isn't lit up, so.
Sometimes it's hard holding two truths at the same time. That we have work to do in our own communities, and it's important to celebrate that and move that work forward, which is what we're doing today. And at the same time, there are other communities here and in the rest of the world, people in Israel, Palestinians, people facing shootings in their communities, hurricane in Mexico, and other things that may be affecting your community and others. who are experiencing excruciating pain and death and uncertainty. I don't have the answer, though I wanted to share maybe one encouragement that it's not only okay, but it's important to rest. You know, an analogy that I hear is how flight attendants always instruct us to put on our own oxygen masks first before helping anyone else. Because if you're knocked out, you're of no help to anyone. And even in non-emergency situations, you ever notice, like if you're hangry, you might do things you regret later. If we're bogged down, we may not be as creative. And if we're tired, you know, we may snap or be short with people, which we wouldn't normally do. And from conversations I'm having with people, I'm hearing fear, anger, helplessness, a lot of big emotions, and a lot of numbness as well. And while yes, bravery sometimes means taking action when you're scared, and as they say, a ship that stays in the harbor is useless if it never goes out to sea like it's intended. But returning to the harbor is where repairs happen, so a ship can go back to sea. And even bravery requires that you eat sometimes. So my encouragement outside this meeting, I encourage you to rest, take a break, breathe, and even during this meeting, if you need to take a break, stand up, walk around, take a deep breath outside, take that moment and take care of yourself. Go ahead and rest. The work will always be here and will always be here. And by we, I mean everybody here and more. And the important thing to remember is rest. And then when you're ready, get back up. Because like I said, we'll be here and we'll be so happy to have you when you're back. So with that said, welcome everybody. We welcome everyone to turn your cameras on so we can see your amazing faces. But like I said, if you need at any time, feel free to turn off your cameras. And when you're ready, get back up and join us. Thank you, everyone. So I said, please introduce yourself in the chat or feel free to change your Zoom names so that we know who's in the room today. And I will introduce today's movement meeting. Trisha, go ahead, next slide. A little bit about the National Farm to School Network. We are a national network of people doing farm to school, which touches every part of the school, food system, as well as working directly in the school system, from farmers and farm workers to procurement, to schools, teachers, food service directors, students, parents, communities. National Farm to School Network, or NFSN. We work nationally, including all 50 states, plus territories, and we partner with many sovereign nations as well. Next slide. Our core functions are, we are a hub for information, networking, and advocacy, and we connect people to resources, people, and policy. We want to be a resource for you to be able to do your work in farm to school and be able to move the movement forward, being able to connect with all these other amazing people who are doing this work and do this work so that we can better each of our communities together. Next slide. Our call to action here at NFSN is that 100% of communities will hold power in a racially just food system. We have a vision of a strong and just food system for all, and we seek deep transformation toward this vision through farm to school, the way kids eat, the way they grow, and learn about food in schools and early care and education settings. 3 years ago, we embarked on a systems mapping process to sketch out the next chapter of farm to school's evolution. And after receiving input from our networks of partners and members, one thing was very clear: inequities based on race persist, and we will not achieve a racially just food system if we do not dismantle these inequities. And right before I pass it on to Sunny, I want to introduce you to the NFSN staff. So NFSN staff, please wave. You can see who they are. They have NFSN in their Zoom names. This is your National Farm to School Network staff. This is your team to help make this work happen. And we hope to connect with you today and afterwards with many different ways. I will pass it on to Sunny.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're so grateful that you're here and to celebrate today in National Farm to School Month and the movement of farm to school in our country. I'm Sunny Baker. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Senior Director of Programs and Policy at National Farm to School Network. We acknowledge that we live and work on stolen land, that there are 574 federally recognized tribal nations in the US and countless communities not counted among that list. We recognize that Indigenous peoples are very much with us today and acknowledge those who have been brave enough to stay behind to pay the ultimate sacrifice to survive. I am tuning in today from the ancestral lands of the Osage and the Quapaw, now known as Little Rock, Arkansas, and I encourage all of you to do your own research, as I know many of you have and have been putting that in the chat, and commit to that acknowledgement in action. We also acknowledge that we arrive to this space on the shoulders of our ancestors who have lifted us up and allowed us to arrive here. At NFSN, we strive to understand all of our partners and network members and our farm to school audience as unique people representing unique communities. And we're so glad to have you all here today as your whole selves. We recognize that the world and our country are in troubling times, and that in addition, we all have personal and community and work obligations. And we are so incredibly grateful for each of you that took the time and the space to join us today. And it's our hope that this celebration brings you joy and inspiration and empowers you to root into your community and support the growth of farm to school and a new food system that honors land and serves people. Thank you so much. I'll turn it back to you, David.
Thanks, Sunny. So we have a full agenda today. We will have fuller introductions before each section, but here is our agenda. We are excited to have Qiana and Mickie join us as our keynote today. We will then go on a virtual field trip to Grow Dat Youth Farm in New Orleans. This will be followed by a panel discussion led by NFSN's advisory board members, and then a legislative chat with the NFSN policy team. And finally, we will be joined by a number of individuals representing their communities for a lightning round to showcase work that is happening in communities around the country. We have a full agenda. We want you participating, so please chat in questions or thoughts at any time. And without further ado, let's see what is happening in the world of farm to school and how we and this movement can be rooted in community. I'll pass it on to Trisha.
Thanks so much, David. Hi, everyone. My name is Trisha Bautista. I use she, her pronouns. I'm calling in from the ancestral lands of the Potawatomi people, now known as Chicago, and I am a part of NFSN's community as program manager. I have the pleasure of working with you all on this group activity. We have an idea who's in the room, but we also want to know and uplift the communities that you all are serving and keeping in mind. So let's answer this question. Who are you representing here today? Communities you would like to uplift in our gathering today by going on menti.com and use the code 42449723. You can also use this QR code that's on your screen, or there are many ways to go about participating. You can also click the link in the chat that one of my colleagues will share. So who are you representing here today? Let's uplift those communities or community that you want to keep in mind as we're celebrating Farm to School. Teachers, children, school food service directors, food service staff. I love that schools and students and children are at the center. For the essence of time, I'm going to move on pretty quickly from this, but please keep participating. We would love to honor those folks, those communities that you want to keep in mind and uplift in our time here today. Really appreciate you all sharing this. Early childhood, farm workers, advocates. All right, please keep those coming. This is just one way we can continue to honor the communities and get to know who's in the room right now. Now, I would love to introduce you all to our next segment of our movement meeting. I'm introducing Mickie. Mickie is the first executive director of the New York City's Mayor's Office of Urban Agriculture. The office leads the city's efforts to increase access to and production of local grown fresh food, minimize our contributions to climate change, and spur economic activity through agriculture. Under Qiana's leadership, the office aims to advance urban agriculture and equity to actively address climate, health, and food disparities in the city's natural and built environment. For over 12 years, Qiana's work has thrived at the intersection of equity, food system, environmental justice, and agriculture. Qiana is the former executive director of Just Food and often speaks on issues of racial equity, food and farm policy, and the solidarity economy, locally and internationally. She serves on the International Council of Urgency and the Coordination Committee of the Civil Society Mechanism, or CSM. Qiana has a Bachelor's of Science in Marketing from Hampton University and received her Food Hub Management certification from the University of Vermont. So without further ado, I would love to introduce and pass it on to Qiana, who's going to be providing our keynote address. Thank you, Qiana.
Thank you, Trisha. I really appreciate it. I'm so happy to be here. When Trisha mentioned the invitation to me, I instantly said yes, and then realized I need to come up with some really great points to share with everybody. I'm such a fan of the work of National Farm to School Network, the fan of the work that folks are doing in their neck of the woods. I do want to start off with not just saying hello, but as everyone else is doing, my preferred pronouns are she, her. I'm calling from the land of the Lenape. People now reference or know these lands as the 5 boroughs of New York City. I'm really here to represent not just myself, but the office, but to talk about urban agriculture, we really also have to talk about agriculture of our region and our state. So I'm happy to see so many other folks here on the call that are representing other parts of the city and New York State in so many different capacities. And one last thing I wanted to add to that very long bio, and thanks for everybody for listening to it, is I was a part of the inaugural Racial Equity Learning Lab about 2 years ago at National Farm to School Network. So the work and the information and the learning and leadership here is never too far from me. And it's very much informed the work that I've been doing now in the city. So again, I'm here, such a great time to have a movement meeting when, again, also excited when thinking about movement, what really comes to mind for me is individuals, power, action. And so being able to be here and how to hear about what movement is doing or what folks are doing, how are individuals building from what they are doing on their day-to-day, how they show up in their professional work, how they build collective power within their institutions, within their work to make impact, and then how do we continue to build that to change systemic change, structural change, disparities and inequity. Trisha mentioned the mission of the Office of Urban Agriculture. For folks who aren't familiar, the city's Office of Urban Agriculture is a new office, only a year old this month. It really came through the advocacy and support of community ag, as well as other folks in the spectrum of urban agriculture like businesses, and elected seeing the importance of having a space where urban agriculture had an office to be supported, amplified, and be a part of the larger city's efforts and initiatives. So to me, coming to a conversation that starts with rooted in community, it's really inspirational to me, because that's very much how I came to this office. And in connecting to that, while advocacy has started it, the work that we're building off has come. What I also am tasked with is to think about innovations in this work. And one of the first things that was the North Star for me in most of my work, in all my work, and here in the city, was how to amplify the equity, or the intersection between equity on environmental equity, racial equity, and economic equity. And one of the first things that came to my mind was how to reimagine, change the work that Farm to School was happening in New York City. And when I say change, I think it's more reimagine. There had been existing work happening, but I realized that we were in this unique window of opportunity to think about how to incorporate the Chancellor Banks' 4 pillars, mayoral priorities and commitments, and around food and urban agriculture, but again, how to advance equity in the work of Farm to School. So the pillars being, reimagining the student experience, scaling, sustaining, and restoring what works, prioritizing student and family wellness, and it's linked to student success, and engaging families to be true partners. So with that mission and with those pillars, I thought about how can I collaborate with our school food nutrition service, a department in DOE, Department of Education, on how to reimagine Farm to School where it was more equitable, creating more pathways for regional food, supporting the economic viability of farmers, in particular BIPOC farmers, smaller scale farmers that often aren't connected to our larger food work. And also increasing the connection to agriculture education for students in classrooms, as well as gardens and farms, whether they're within walking distance to them or the farmers that they may be able to learn from in connection to who's bringing their food. And to me, I was encouraged that with the pillars and the commitment, and with this desire to move equity and advance urban agriculture in the city and connect to our regional partners as well, that we could be at a point where we can create a new blueprint for change in New York City. And I was further encouraged that our state agriculture markets department, as well as the USDA, believed in this reimagining and afforded us some funds to put that into motion. Also, we had gotten some state funds from a state education department to actually try to find a way to increase locally purchased food from distributors. And so again, this need in New York City, while we're so, people look to us for a lot of things, what I did identify and what I've been working in collaboration with our school food department is that we did need stronger, more equitable pathways between local growers and distributors, schools and students. And what really holds us and bonds us is healthy food. Now, the other part of this work that I wanted to incorporate being in the city is how can we support the viability of farmers, in particular, farmers of color and smaller scale farmers. And thinking with the vision of New York City, having, what I see as the 3 pillars of this reimagined work is creating a farmer producer training that would create more direct pathways for farmers in our region, upstate and down, rural and urban, to have a better connection to procurement in our school system. And how can we identify products that they would be able to do, but again, scaled to the contracts that would be able to best serve them, understanding they're coming from a smaller scale. What is the best way to amplify their bounty? How can we identify and inform contracts that would be accessible to them and viable to them? Because oftentimes school contracts are not for farmers. I've also, within that training, we imagine bringing in minority and women business entrepreneur certification, or also known as MWBE training certification. And I wanted to do that as well because we were talking about viability. It's not just about getting the contracts. I'm also thinking about longer term viability for businesses, in particular businesses of color or women or folks that fall in this certification. Can this create what we oftentimes see in procurement is equitable indicators around MWBE? Are we creating a pathway through school food that could create opportunities for these farmers, these distributors, and other businesses to be certified so they have a better chance of being in that pool? And again, diversifying the pool that the city is buying from. Now we're talking about school food here, but that can also be institutional, other institutions, other agencies, other departments, as well as beyond the landscape and how our partners intersect in their work. And also creating more hands-on agriculture education opportunity for New York students. And that's where I really want to put a lot of my focus on my remaining minutes with y'all. Is I thought it was more and more important, especially as we continue to see food disparity, as we continue to work and tackle health disparity in our communities, and as we continue to face climate crisis in all its forms. This is the moment we need our students to see themselves, to be trained, empowered, but gain the education that they are climate stewards, that they are ag stewards, and the work of Farm to School can support their education and training and development as well. For me, and I think for a lot of folks here, it's not just what ends up on the plate, it's also what kids are able to learn about in terms of growing and actually get the opportunity to do so. I think for me, thinking about racial equity and being a city as diverse as New York City, it was equally as important for all of those opportunities to have farmers of color, to have businesses of color, even consultants of color on the back end. I wanted kids to see themselves in this work, in this education, in this food system, to be not just the end user, but to be leaders. I also wanted them to see the folks that are growing their food, that they can look like them, they can be them, no matter their gender, no matter their race, no matter even where they're located in our state. I thought it was important that students understood and learned not what they are doing in class, but they're within walking distance oftentimes from growing spaces in their community. And even if we are bringing farmers into their classroom, that these are folks that also look like them. So one great example that I wanted to share with y'all was this model. It feels innovative, but I think y'all know that this is work that's been longstanding. One example in New York City that I wanted to highlight is the Learning Garden in Bergen Beach. This was an underutilized lot, 2-acre lot that Superintendent Beauvais, as well as parents and community advocates and other leaders for over a decade, saw go underutilized. And what they saw, where other people saw trash, they saw an opportunity to be a learning garden. And through perseverance, community, strategy, action, and engagement, have actually created and put in motion a pathway to building out this garden to go from an underutilized lot to becoming a shovel-ready project full with which will have fruit trees, raised beds, a learning center, a pavilion, as well as other spaces for ag education, as well as culinary education. One unique piece as well is that this is not just a school garden, it is in fact a learning garden, which also means that education is going to be for the breadth of students in that district. So it's out in the community, where community, it's going to be a hub for not just student learning, but community learning around their food. And so while we, look here, and we talk about the importance of gardens and we talk about the importance of Farm to School, for me, this inspiration and being able to work is something that I hope to replicate throughout the 5 boroughs. And I thought would be a good example here, and to help kick off this conversation about being rooted in community. how important it is to have cultural relevancy in our food systems, as well as the folks who are doing the work, from food service directors to farmers, how important and critical this is for student wellness and learning, not just in the moments we share with them in right now, but the moments to come for their life, and how critical these times are, and the different intersections and points that farm to school work, the work that you are doing, the work that you continue to move, will impact them. They will become, it will not just heal them and make them whole now. These are how we're able to grow and nurture future leaders. So with that, I'm short on time. I'm gonna drop in my email just to make sure folks are able to reach out to me. If there is one or two questions that folks might have, please feel free to drop it in the chat. If I can't get to them now, I will love to follow up and get to them later. But thank you again for the time. I look forward to hearing more about what comes from this meeting. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share what we're doing here in the city. And I look forward to be continuing I am going to continue to be inspired by what I see across our nation in the work of Farm to School that you all are doing. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Qiana. I know everyone's muted, but we can get some applause responses in the chat or reactions. Thank you so much, Qiana, for joining us today. Yes, I see some applauses.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Love it, love it. Awesome. We are gonna pass it on. I will pass it on to Tomas to introduce our virtual field trip.
Thanks, David. My name is Tomas Delgado, pronouns he, him. I'm the program manager with National Farm to School Network, and I'm based in the ancestral lands of the Peoria, Kaskaskia, Piankashaw, and Wea, which is present-day Urbana, Illinois. Would love to introduce our virtual site visit today. This is Grow-Det Farm. Grow-Det Farm is a nonprofit organization based in New Orleans, Louisiana, that focuses on youth development, sustainable agriculture, and community engagement. Their mission is to nurture a diverse group of young leaders through the meaningful work of growing food. One youth leader's experience at our farm can benefit the communities for a lifetime. So special thanks to Red Squared Communications Design for the production of this video and this site visit. And without further ado, let's cue up the video and take a tour of Grow-Det Youth Farm.
It's kind of like a feeling, like a connection. Some of the stuff that we've eaten here, I helped like plant in the ground. This grew and I'm able to eat it now.
We started having a lot of different workshops. Like our mission here at Grow-Det is to nurture a diverse group of young leaders through the meaningful work of growing food. So through the growing food, we have to understand a lot of the systems that happen while growing food. So we like talking about neoliberalism, it was talking about like food swamps, food deserts, and like food insecurity, and how those different things affect people in different areas.
So at Grow-Det, we work with an anti-oppression curriculum called Visions. And this is one in which we've been working with since the founding of Grow-Det, in which we are firstly recognizing that we are a staff and a youth community across difference, across racial, gender, geographical, and other kinds of class differences. And part of our organizational culture and embedded within our values is this idea that we are different, but just to call out diversity is not enough. We have to explore and wrestle with the historical inequities and historical roles that different groups that we all are a part of have played. And so we explore that in workshops, we explore that in lessons that are also related, oftentimes related to food.
My access to fresh food when I was in high school was zero. I think it's important that kids have the option to have fresh food. I think that when it comes down to it, it's all about where it's coming from, though. I mean, if they can get it locally and we can do something around getting more land for schools or neighborhoods for people to take over and farm and stuff like that, then that'll make things so much simpler. You can feed people with a garden, but like, you just need more land, you know, and somebody dedicated to that space. I think people often just underestimate how important farming is in any type of farming you do, like just working with the land, making food, making herbs, like it all comes from the land. I think people just don't see that base level of importance.
I think it's something everyone should experience. You know, the community is very tight-knit. You get to know everyone, you know, have a relationship with everyone, like a separate relationship or a whole group relationship is something that everyone should have growing up. I'm a picky eater, but my favorite thing to cook here was we made homemade spaghetti with, like, you know, tomatoes and all those things. We also made pesto pasta, and we did really good, but it was kind of like, you know, our first time kind of making everything.
I enjoyed learning at GrowDat. Is just generally about how to like grow stuff, because it is a very useful like I guess trait and ability, because learning about what types of plants you like thrive in, what types of soils, learning which season is right to plant what like type of plant.
So our partnership with National Farm to School Network is primarily through hosting events, hosting visitors, and working with partners in our region who are organizing conferences, who are doing tours and demonstrations. And I think it's an opportunity for us to share what we're doing here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. There's a link in the chat if you want to learn more about GrowDat. Please check them out. They are amazing. I will pass it on now to Miguel for our panel.
Thank you, David. What a beautiful video. And so glad to be here with all of you at our movement meeting. And as someone said, National Farm to School Month. It's good to see many of you. I've seen you on your screen, your names. Qiana, what a wonderful presentation. I always enjoy listening to you and what you have to say. My name is Miguel Villarreal. I'm the interim co-executive director, and I'm calling in from the ancestral lands of the Miwok out here in Northern California. I use the pronouns him and he. And I'm in, as you heard me say, co-executive director alongside the incredible Jessica Gudmundson, who I've known for many, many years. You'll hear from her in a bit. And we're also supported by 17 advisory board members who would guide us and give us support, as I mentioned. And today, I'm glad to say that we have 3 of our board members that you're going to hear from. We've got some questions that we're going to ask them about their work and their role. They'll introduce themselves, but I just want to mention who they are. Kat Soltanmorad, Andy Naja-Riese, and Jennifer Gaddis. And I've known all 3 of them for a very long time, and I've respected the work, and as they are well respected in this field and the work that they do. So I'm so glad to be here alongside them today to talk about this work that we're doing. And so I'm going to start with Kat, because Kat and I were just at a farm to school event, actually California farm to school event down in Palm Springs. And it's always inspiring to be around so many passionate people. They're just, one of the things that I'm when we go to these events is I come out of there every time with a sense of hope that there are people doing this work and doing incredible work and against all obstacles, but yet keep moving forward. And so today we'll hear from 3 of those people that are doing some incredible work in this food system. So we have 30 minutes, which it doesn't go very far. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. But I'm gonna start with Kat, since she and I were just together. We're both full of energy and inspiration. But the question that I'm going to start with, Kat, is from your perspective on local food sourcing, what support is still needed to ensure schools are moving towards values-aligned purchasing?
Thank you, Miguel. It was really inspiring the last 2 days, and thank you, National Farm to School Network, for inviting me. I'm amongst many amazing experts and inspirations to me. Miguel was one of them, and continues to be all throughout my career. In the past 20 years, I've worked in farm to school. I'm also a food service director in Northern California on the ancestral lands of the Washoe tribe, the Maidu and Paiute tribes, who we're actually working very closely with this year to introduce indigenous menu items for our students to really align with the education that we're doing in the classroom through our teachers. What do we need in school food service? In the 12 years that I've been at Tahoe Truckee, we helped build our local food hub. And that's been an inspiration and real big support to us in school food service. It's allowing us to work with 55 smaller farms within 250 miles of our food shed in our school district. And weekly, we receive deliveries. We crop plan together every year. We have a weekly ordering system. We wrote the California Department of Food and Ag Farm to School Incubator Grant together. We work very closely together, and that relationship has blossomed over the years. And I would be remiss to say any work that we have done is successful because of the Food Hub and their efforts and our community partners. So it's so important to keep those community partners at the forefront of your school food service program. Widen that circle, widen the net, so to speak. It's so important. I'm going to start, there's 3 big areas: local, state, and federal. In my experience and observation, staff morale is tremendous. Food service staff don't get the credit that they deserve. We did during COVID, but our frontline staff tend to be the lowest paid. They tend to be all women, usually. They are not usually recognized when it comes to as the crux of a school district. There are unique cases. Our district is one of them, but really focusing on staff and their needs, being involved in the union, being involved in what they need in terms of training. So what we do bring from the farms, they're not readily washed, chopped, ready to go or processed. Training will go a long way, and really encouraging staff and providing that nutrition education that they may not have is important, in addition to student and staff. So nutrition education and training at all levels, I feel, is very important. Partners may be able to assist with that. The state might have grants to assist with that as well. Distribution and delivery is huge. I don't have the capacity to work with 55 farmers separately and make deliveries. So if there's a nonprofit that can help you with that, if there's a food hub, or even a local provider, a distributor who can help with that is huge for us. They also may be able to broker your crop plan. A crop plan is simply, hey, My kids love cucumbers. They love strawberries, broccoli. You know, these are some major produce items that if there's a local farmer that specializes in that, that would be a great starting point. And let's broker something that's a livable wage for the farmer, but also something that the school district can maintain at least more than one time a year. Equipment to process local food, or if you're in a larger urban area, there might be a processor already that can help do that. Butternut squash is a great example. We just don't have the labor to cut seed, skin, all of that with butternut squash. So finding a local processor through our food hub has been tremendous. And we're hoping to bring more butternut squash that's locally grown by way of that processor. And I cannot emphasize nutrition education. We don't want to feed trash cans. We already don't have enough time to eat in the cafeteria. It's so important that kids realize where their food is coming from, because they will inherently just embrace it. They love hearing from farmers in the classroom. They love going to farms, all grade levels, from 18-year-olds all the way to our preschoolers. Everyone has the same amount of interest and passion when they see a farmer really provide their crops and how they get there and what it takes. At the state level, any kind of administrative professional training, especially for purchasing departments, for the larger districts. Smaller districts like mine, I'm responsible for my own purchasing, so I don't really see that as a barrier. But when I worked in larger districts, purchasing departments were sometimes a barrier. They didn't want to take single hand contracts. They wanted larger ones because it created more work. So if the state can get on board to support that, that would be amazing. If there's partners who have that ability or push and pull politically, that would be really great to support. And additional training and equipment dollars for cafeterias and for staff is great. And at the federal level, I say this everywhere I go, we want our commodity dollars to stay local. So for example, my district at 4,100 students, we provide about 300,000 meals a year. What all of those commodity dollars, which we appreciate, we want to actually have so that we can get local and California grown produce through farm to school. So those are some big areas that we can see that has been helpful for our district in terms of growing our program.
Thank you, Kat. I really appreciate that wonderful overview. And I know that you've been doing some incredible work with it, and even recently at this event that we were at, were awarded for your efforts in impacting the climate because of the food purchases that you're making. So again, thank you for all of your efforts and continued wisdom and knowledge that you impart to food service directors, the community, and everybody involved in this food system. So next, I'd like to introduce Andy. And when I say introduce, just again, turn it over to him. And Andy, what I want you to do is tell, I know you've worn many different hats, but I want you to share what you're currently doing and maybe what you've done in the past that has given you this broad knowledge and perspective. But again, along the same lines, we want to hear your voice on local food purchasing, food sourcing, and what support from your perspective is still needed to ensure that schools are moving towards values-aligned purchasing.
Yeah, thanks so much, Miguel, and everyone. And so typically I'd be calling in from the Bay Area of California, likewise unceded Coast Miwok land, but I'm actually in the heart of the country this week. I'm in Iowa, in Des Moines, at the World Food Prize Foundation as part of the California delegation. And it's quite an incredible experience to be here and speaking about the importance of local and regenerative and climate smart agriculture to large scale industrial monocropping commodity growers. But surprisingly, it was well received. But one thing that was interesting while I've been here is kind of two key themes. Number one is that we have to do more than feed children. We have to nourish them. So food quality is incredibly important. And number two, surprisingly, there's not a lot of discussion about schools and farm to school program, but there have been a lot of interesting topics focused on food entrepreneurship. So teaching young people about food and farming related businesses, which I think is really important. But in my typical work, I run a California-based nonprofit organization called Agricultural Institute of Marin, and we operate 9 year-round certified farmers markets with a network of about 400 small-scale farmers, fishers, ranchers, food makers, and artisans. We also operate a mobile farmers market where we bring the farmers market predominantly to low-income community senior housing sites, as well as a variety of education and food access and policy work. And I think what I've really learned over time, and it's really about the importance that there's no one solution that helps to create change, that we have to begin our work with education and engagement with youth and children and families, but also we have to think about our food environments, which are often determined by policy and systems changes. So what we're currently working on right now is really about finding ways to link our small scale and particularly underserved and marginalized farmers with places to, number one, promote agritourism. That's a really important opportunity to bring children and families actually to visit farms. We also, as we do this work through our youth-based farm education, it's very important that we pay the farmers for their time. So when farmers are hosting farm tours, they shouldn't be doing this as volunteers. They need to get paid for their time, which is a really important lesson. We also focus on ways to help bring farm fresh produce into schools. One thing that I'd say is when I talk with a lot of our farmers, and when I say farmers, I'm speaking more broadly. So it could be row crop farmers, orchard farmers, dairy producers, fishers, and ranchers. So I think it's important to look across all types of foods, is that when it comes to engaging with schools, that about half of our farmers that want to do farm to school say they want to sell directly to the school. The other half say they don't want to deal with bidding and contracts and procurement. They would much rather sell through a food hub or a cooperative food model. So I think giving options is really important. The second thing that we found that's really impactful too is starting small. So as an example, when schools have the ability to do micro purchasing, so that's a really good opportunity for micro purchasing under a certain threshold where the school can buy directly from a farmer. Also thinking about ways to utilize the fresh fruit and vegetable program or other types of snack programs too, especially for farmers that don't have the capacity to reach the volume that's needed at a school. Again, starting small with programs like cooking labs. That's actually how I originally started working with Miguel when their program was coming out to do cooking labs. So we connected Miguel with some of our farmers, and then also thinking about ways to serve children in schools year round. So really thinking about impacts for, I think, farm to summer, oftentimes how we can align the growing season with youth and community-based enrichment, I think is really important too. But the one thing I've learned over time is that when it comes to creating programs, that we have to think about what's age appropriate and culturally appropriate for children, and also what's going to work for the farmers. I've seen many farmers that have experienced financial harm as a result of different local programs. So we have to make sure we have models where farmers can get paid up front, get paid timely, and market rates for their work. So I'll stop there.
Andy, thank you so much. I always enjoy listening to you too. And as everybody can tell, we've had, this is why they're both on the National Farm School Advisory panel. So Andy, again, I appreciate your perspective. And yes, I really enjoyed when we were working together with the farmers and get the farmers' perspective. I mean, that was, for me, the most enlightening work that I've ever done in terms of meeting farmers, but also what they provide to the schools. So thank you for that perspective. And now I want to turn it over to someone that have long respected and have always wanted to meet, but just never had the opportunity, or paths never crossed. But they have crossed quite a bit, a few times now. They were worked both on in some capacity involved with the National Farm to School Network, and that's Jennifer Gaddis. So Jennifer, again, I've just known about you for so long, and just admired the work that you've done, your writings, your the information that you share out with the communities by and large. And so I want you to take some time to talk about a little bit, what you've done and what you share some knowledge of work in regards to families, community, and also along the same lines, your perspective on local food sourcing and what support is still needed to ensure the schools are moving towards, values aligned. We've all talked about that, how important that is. So I'll turn it over to you, Jennifer. Thank you.
Thanks, Miguel, for the invitation. Hi, everybody. So I'm Jen Gaddis, and I'm an associate professor of civil society and community studies at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, where we are on Ho-Chunk land. And I would just echo everything that Kat and Andy have said so far, but I just wanted to add a few additional points. So I think one of the things that I've really tried to emphasize in a lot of my conversations with people about farm to school and school food programs more broadly is how much potential these programs have if we really invest in them and make sure that communities have the capabilities that they need to not only cook from scratch, but to also be sourcing local food. And I think that one of the things that we really have to take seriously in this movement is the workers. So I was really happy to hear both Kat and Andy talking about frontline school nutrition staff as well as farmers. And then I think we also really have to take very seriously the needs and perspectives of students and families. And that's really what I try to do through the research that I do in my department. So a lot of the work that we do is community-based research or action-oriented research. So I do a lot of work in collaboration with not only different school districts, but labor unions and different coalitions, and also with youth who are advocating for school lunch justice in their schools. And I think that one of the things that has been really helpful for me in recent years is not only looking at some of the most exemplary programs here in the United States. I think that there's really amazing examples of people really working within our existing system of the National School Breakfast and Lunch Program. So people like Kat and Miguel, I think, are really shining examples of what is possible within the current system. But there's also a lot of real struggles and limitations. And I think that one of the things that's really challenging is that you're dealing when you're trying to make like big scale transitions, not only with whatever your existing infrastructure might be in your community. Some communities have a lot of capability to do scratch cooking because they do have more kitchens in their schools, and other communities like where I live in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm doing a project right now supporting our elementary schools, and not a single one of them has a kitchen that is equipped for cooking. They're all getting pre-packed meals from a central nutrition center. So, there's variance in one place to another about what the infrastructure looks like, and also what staffing looks like in terms of really what wages and compensation look like. But for the most part, I think, as Kat mentioned, school nutrition workers are the lowest paid employees, or usually tied for lowest paid in their programs. And I think one of the big challenges that we have is that it's really difficult to do more values aligned sourcing and to get more local products into schools if you don't have the capability to do at least some kind of speed scratch cooking. And so I think that's one area where we really have to attend to what the labor conditions look like for people in schools, because it's really great, like getting universal school meals. I know a number of states have done that so far. We also, I think, as Andy was mentioning, we really have to focus on the food quality piece. And all of the work that I've done with youth in different schools, I hear a lot of times, particularly when you get more to the middle school and high school level, when young people are making their own decisions about food more so than at the elementary level, that they want fresher food. And a lot of them want to have real input into what menus look like. And that's something that is a lot more possible to do when you have a labor force that is equipped to do scratch cooking and feels valued and respected for the work that they do. But that said, people being trained to do the work that they do, loving the work, loving the kids, doesn't ultimately pay the bills. So like sometimes you really, you can lose great people, or, people can work in the program, but they're not being compensated fairly. And that's an issue for the profession broadly. So I shared in the chat earlier a report that we did I led this report for the Healthy School Meals for All Coalition here in Wisconsin. And what we really wanted to try to show was that this is actually like a very systemic issue across not only our state, but also others. I think there are some other states like California, for example, that do have stronger union density and I think have better negotiating power than what we have in Wisconsin and like some other states. But broadly speaking, I think that it's a real challenge because the majority of funding for our school nutrition programs is coming from the federal government, and there isn't any adjustment. There's no earmarking for labor, right? And there's no adjustment based on the cost of living or labor market considerations. So there is a higher reimbursement rate for Hawaii and Alaska, but that's it. So like somebody who could be in a really high cost of living area like San Francisco, California, for example, they're getting the exact same reimbursement rate as a small town in Wisconsin, even though the labor conditions and housing costs are really different in those communities. So I think it's really important to be making sure that programs have the money that they need in order to pay their staff a family sustaining wage. And that's something that can only come, I think, through investment in terms of public funding, but also investment in terms of public participation in the program. So in part of my work, what I'm really trying to do is to also understand what some of the motivational factors are for families and children to participate in school meal programs, especially when cost is no longer a barrier. So one of the projects I'm working right now on with a colleague is called Feelings About Food, and we're really looking at the emotions and feelings that parents and caregivers may have in relation to participating or not in school meal programs, because I think we see in some communities, even when school meals are free, that participation isn't at like always like 80, 90 or 100%. So there's, I think, other factors that are going on that we need to really understand, because high participation matters a lot, not only for the culture of school meals, but also for the financial viability of certain kinds of improvements that you might want to make with regards to staffing or procurement. So I think that continuing to really focus on investments in labor and infrastructure and really getting to a new systems state is important. So one of the things that I tend to really talk about with different school board members or other community stakeholders is that we can see from different studies. So for example, there was a statewide study that was done in California that looked at the scratch cooking readiness of schools. And they found that schools that do a really high amount of fresh food preparation and those that do a very low amount actually spend the same total amount of their budgets on food and labor. It's just that those are doing a lot of fresh preparation are spending more on labor, and those that are doing a little bit of fresh preparation are spending a lot more on food. And one of those models really is a lot better for local communities in terms of creating jobs, the model where you're doing a lot of fresh preparation. So I think it's important to just recognize that these things require an investment to get to a new kind of normal within like the school food system. But it's not to say that these things are always going to be like, you know, incredibly more expensive than the current model. And I think we also have to think about, you know, the values piece of what is it that we're actually paying for and what are we getting out of it in terms of true public value. And I think I'll just end by saying that that's where, for me, it's been really helpful in recent years to not only look at leading programs in the United States that I think give us a sense of what's kind of possible within like district level or state level changes, but also looking at other countries that have national school lunch programs that are really making pretty profound transformations at the entire like level of a national school lunch program. So a few of the examples, I actually have a book coming out in the spring called Transforming School Food Politics Around the World, where I brought together people from a variety of different countries to kind of write about what they see happening in their local contexts. And a few examples from there, both Brazil and South Korea, for instance, they have really strong laws about what public food procurement looks like. In Brazil, at least 30% of the ingredients that are sourced have to come from particular designations of small family farmers, from people who are involved in the landless workers movement, agroecological producers. So like these specific categories that the government has said, we really want to be directing public funds to these particular kinds of producers. And it's actually a requirement of schools that participate in our national program to source this way, not kind of an optional thing like in the United States. And then in South Korea, they've done a lot to develop what I would really call like the infrastructure for having a different kind of food system. And they really started to do that in the context of their universal free eco-friendly school lunch program. And that has been like such a successful model that they've really started to expand it out to other kinds of public food programs. But the government really took the leading role as a result of a lot of like civil society activism and kind of pushing the government to take this role. But at some point, the government really took on the role of actually creating a lot of the kind of food hub and processing and distribution infrastructure to get these foods to schools. And there's been kind of more recent experimentation with doing real direct supply chains between particular urban areas in Seoul, South Korea, and surrounding rural communities. So kind of that idea of like direct supply chain relationships with farmers, but at more of this scale of connecting rural producers and urban consumers. So I think we have a lot to learn too from some countries that have much more like strict standards and also so financial and policy investments in doing this kind of work. And I'll end there for now.
Thank you, Jen. You've given us so much to think about. And of course, many of us have been experiencing those. I had the good fortune of attending a European school conference, if you will, school food conference. And certainly many of the things that I heard at that conference are right along the lines that you're talking about. So this is a global problem, if you will. It is also those global opportunities. And so I'm glad that we're here and we're looking at these things and to as we move forward. But we are at time. You know, I said 30 minutes are going to go by pretty fast, but I appreciate all the three of you and your wisdom and knowledge and honestly what you bring to this. And I'm glad that we have this recorded because there's so much information in here. And I wanted to say to everyone that's on this call as well that a lot, you know, the National Farm to School Network, in terms of the resources that are available, you can reach out to us there, and we can put you in contact. If we don't have the information, I know Julie Brewer from the USDA Farm to School program is also on this call, and so they're happy to share any information as well that they might have. But it truly is a global effort, and for some of us that have been around, I'll just use myself as an example, for many, many decades, we're further along than we were 40 years ago for sure. Much further along than 30 years ago. And you get the picture. We're now much further along than we were even 10 years ago. So, we're realizing that it's these partnerships that we have to make in our communities at a global level, at a national level, at a state level, including so many voices. And one of the things that I've been saying for a very long time now that the National Farm to School Network is this hub. So as you go out there, as you're being advocates on behalf of the work that we're doing, please share the work that's going on in the National Farm to School Network. Direct food service directors, any other organizations to our website. Have them join. There's no cost of membership. You get information about what's going on in this work. And again, connecting people to people, as David said earlier, connecting you to advocacy, connecting you to resources. So again, thank you, Jen, Andy, Kat. I truly appreciate your time, your wisdom and knowledge. And I hope everyone has received this information as well as I did. So I always learn something from these three speakers. So thank you so much and enjoy your rest of the day. So I'm going to turn it over to, yes, let's give them all a round of applause, please. Thank you. Let's turn it over to our next presentation. Thank you.
Thanks so much to the NFSN Advisory Board and Miguel for moderating that. So yes, please, applauses in the chat, applause reactions. Thank you so much for sharing what you are seeing in the farm to school world. We are going to now pass it on. We have Jasmine Rudolph, who is also on our advisory board. She will be moderating a panel with our policy team. Jasmine, I will pass it on to you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Jasmine Rudolph, and I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm also a member of the Advisory Board of National Farm to School Network. I use she, her pronouns, and I am joined with some of the NFSN staff so that we can talk about policy. So would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure thing. Zoom is telling me I'm spotlighted, so I'll go ahead and go first. I'm Qiana Spangler. I'm the policy director at National Farm to School Network. I use she, her pronouns. I'm located on ancestral Piscataway and Nacotchunk land in now known as Washington, D.C., our nation's capital.
Hi, y'all. My name is Ryan Betz. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a policy specialist at NFSN, and I am located on the ancestral lands of the Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Quapaw peoples, now known as Mississippi. I'll pass it to Cassandra.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. My name is Cassandra Bull. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a policy specialist here at NFSN, and I am located in Southern Jersey, which is on the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Lenni Lenape peoples. Back to you, Jasmine. Oop, you're muted.
Of course, I'm sorry. I said thank you, Ryan, Cassandra, and Karen. I have our first question, which is what are some federal policy wins that we've seen over the last year? Who wants to take that one first?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick us off, Jasmine. Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things that are very encouraging and exciting happening in the federal sphere. The first is universal meals, or as many of y'all might know, healthy school meals for all, as well as activity that's been happening with the Patrick Leahy Farm to School Grant Program. But kind of starting with universal meals, I think everyone here knows, and it's like preaching to the choir, but we all know that school meals play such an important role in childhood hunger, supporting good nutrition, ensuring students are, well nourished and get the most out of their school day. There's plenty of research to back this up. And, at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, schools were able to offer free school meals to all students, despite whether they were remote, in person, or hybrid, as the years went on. But, after 2022, that program ended despite the ongoing need. But this trial run really showed how beneficial offering free meals to all students for children and families in school is. And so, we've actually seen some recent legislation being introduced. I think the top of the line one that we're seeing now is the Universal School Meals Program Act, which has been introduced now both in the Senate and the House. This is a bill that would create a permanent nationwide healthy school meals for all program. It would increase reimbursement rates for school meals. It would end lunch shaming, reimburse schools for meal debt, provide incentives for local food and procurement, as well as expand summer meal access and expand CACFP, which would affect early care education and after school meals. And there's also some other legislation that's been introduced that would expand school meal access, which includes the School Meals Expansion Act, which would help expand CEP. There's the new No Hungry Kids in Schools Act, which would create a statewide CEP, which is Community Eligibility Provision Program, which basically, if some of y'all aren't familiar with CEP, it can kind of help. Depending on the makeup of the school population, if there's a certain percentage that's like on SNAP or on like other benefit programs, if that school has a certain percentage, then the whole school is eligible for free school meals. And then finally, there's the Expanding Access to School Meals Act, which would increase that threshold that I was kind of talking about, that free and reduced eligibility threshold to 200%. As well as kind of increased funding for CEP schools. National Farm to School Network is also part of a national Healthy School Meals for All coalition that's being led by FRAC. So we support all four of these bills. I mean, obviously, we would love to see the Universal School Meals Program Act, in place. But Also, we're also seeing, like, for several years in a row, we've seen increased funding for the Patrick Leahy Farm to School grant program. That's been, when it first started, there was $5 million that was allotted, and now we're up to 12 million in this past fiscal year. So it's been really encouraging to see these exciting things coming out of Congress. And I would add that the Farm to School Act is like the most stable farm to school grant program that's funded through the Farm to School Act, is one of the more stable ones. But I know Karen was wanting to kind of maybe share about some
breaking developments
of funds. Yeah,
we got some breaking developments. So I think that if some of you, your Google News reader or things like that might have caught that just yesterday, on the Senate side, got a bipartisan introduction. We'll have a little bit of the Farm to School Act that would expand and improve it. So we can discuss that a little bit. But I also wanted to talk about some of the uses of both COVID aid funds and Farm to School funds that we've seen flowing out through the last year. And I think that what's exciting about this especially is that we're seeing more recognition than ever of the importance of farm to school sourcing, education, cooking and preparation, food service than ever before. And it's definitely a multifaceted problem to try and tackle. There's lots of different hurdles to jump over to make our way over to get where we want to go. But the investments that we've seen, particularly from the use of money from USDA over the last year, has been super helpful. We've seen 42 separate cooperative agreements with states and territories for local food for schools, looking specifically at local procurement, right? As Kat was saying, wanting to be able to have local sourcing for and more local sourcing, more choices in that for our school meal programs. We also have seen a recognition through the Farm to School state formula grants of the work that it takes from the state agency to support and coordinate that, and recognize that that's a muscle that needs to be built up to really actively support farm to school work. We've also seen a commitment from USDA and for the school food transformation and several phases of that work that are now rolling out and coming to fruition on the ground. And also throughout USDA, we're seeing greater coordination through things like these new regional food business centers that are going to provide assistance and actually recognize the importance of local food and accessing local markets as a business opportunity that producers should have assistance with accessing. So that's a really, really, really fast overview of some of the things that have been rolling out that I think are notable because we're seeing more commitment than ever before, and at very high levels. People talking about it, like the Secretary of Agriculture, that, maybe in previous years, previous decades, it wouldn't even have been on their radar. So I think that's extremely helpful. I'll turn it over to my other team members too.
Thanks, Ryan and Karen, for talking about federal policy wins. As someone who's on the ground, in a classroom or in the garden, I feel like I'm kind of a part of a hive. And I know that I have y'all, out there on the policy front as a worker bees working on behalf, and really just understanding how some of those policies trickle down to me being able to take a group of kids on a field trip to a farm, or just being able to connect some of those dots. So I appreciate the work you're doing, not only on federal level, but also on state. So with that being said, I will bring up our second question, which is what are some of the state policy wins that we've seen over the last year?
Yeah, there have been several, and again, I'm going to lean in with universal school meals. So there was a number of healthy school meal for all policy passed in several states. You know, prior to this past legislative term, you know, we saw universal meals come out of Maine, California, Colorado, but we've also seen New Mexico, Vermont, Minnesota, Massachusetts, Michigan pass and be able to fund their universal school meals for all their students. So and I would be amiss if I didn't mention also Illinois passed a bill but hasn't appropriated funds, so they're still working to get the budget behind it, and as well as Washington State, which passed universal meals but only for grades K through 4. So, and I think one of the most interesting things that is like all the states that now have permanent universal meal policies already had strong policies in place that was supporting local food purchasing. So that's really encouraging. It's really exciting. I think that should be a huge win for the farm to school movement, because you know, us as a group, you know, us as farm to school folks are really passionate about what we're doing, and you know, connecting that with the universal meals efforts can really add a boost to those campaigns. And speaking of campaigns, you know, we have been doing the Who's at the Table School Meals campaign to support values aligned universal meals since 2022, since last year. And we've been we'll probably be dropping a link in the chat to that website if you all haven't visited. But you know, just as farm to school is a triple win for kids, farmers, and communities, you know, school meals for all policies can do even more when they embody, you know, local procurement, as well as like our 6 shared community values that we share as a network. It can really transform the food system. And so, yeah, we also have a lot of resources that we've generated from that, that we hope that states that are currently you know, active and coming together to pass a state policy will be able to use, and we'll drop the current resources in the chat as well. But you know, this year we're actually advancing our work to directly support coalitions advocating for state level healthy school meals for all, and so we're currently we've currently reached out to 8 different coalitions, and hopefully we'll begin working with them over the next couple of years to help support the education advocacy efforts of the importance of school meals for all. And like the connection with farm to school and values alignment.
Yeah, I just want to jump in here. Thanks, Ryan, for that overview of universal meals. I want to share that in this current political context of federal gridlock and infighting, I'm such a proponent of state policies. I think they're where it's at to get progressive, sustainable bills through, you know, the state legislature to really have that impact, as Jasmine said, for the boots on the ground in the communities. Outside of universal meals, as Ryan mentioned, there's a bunch of other bills that we've been tracking for years and that we're continuing to track. So in the chat, there's our state policy handbook, which includes all the bills in all states and US territories dating back all the way to 2002, whether that's been introduced, enacted, trends and policies. And then on the map that Jiyun shared, we're currently tracking the current legislative cycle, so that you can go on that interactive map, see what's happening in your state, and also share with us what bills you're working on so we can track and celebrate your wins too. And so some of those wins are in local food purchasing incentives. So as Karen mentioned and Ryan helped getting offset the cost of local food purchasing. And for an example, in the past 3 years, a state like Alabama has adopted a program and it's already doubled in funding, right? In Michigan, the 10 cents a meal program started as a pilot, now has almost a $10 million annual budget. And I think I will pass it back to Jasmine.
Thanks, Cassandra and Ryan, for talking about legislative impacts at the state level. I appreciate that. I'm from Pennsylvania. Karen and I, we advocated at May Day in our state capital. And so I was grateful for that. And there are states that are kind of like setting precedents, and we can learn from what they're doing well. And it helps to get new ideas for what we can do. And then we also move other states and we bring them along with us, even if they're new. So I feel like there's a place on the state level for everyone in this movement. So we're at our last round. It's the lightning round. So we want to know, what can we expect to see moving forward? Where is this movement headed? What do we see in 2024? Can y'all believe it's 2024 almost? But where are we going? Where are we headed?
Yeah, I'll stay on this trend of kicking us off. So yeah, I think a couple things. Really what we're seeing, especially like across the like federal advocacy, state advocacy, is seeing folks kind of come together, partner across sectors to build complementary programs. And just for example, National Farm to School Network, we're involved in several diverse coalitions, such as like the Heal Food Coalition, National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, Good Food for All. And I know Karen and others on the team have been actively engaged in supporting those coalitions across sectors, across and I think also to that, to be able to kind of work and partner together, we're seeing an increase in like language access, language justice. I know as a network, we're, and especially as a policy team, we're really trying to be way more proactive in adopting language justice into our communications, policy communications, and webinars, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, those are just a couple.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think that a lot of the speakers before me have sort of led into the point that I think of as a big trend, which is the focus on labor and elevating the school food profession. So we've seen some examples of this in policy, looking at, like, on the federal level, scratch cooking in school meals, but also at the state level. California, for instance, as part of like a follow-up and a complement to their universal, their School Meals for All policy that they passed, has been launching this Healthy School Food Pathway program in conjunction with Chef Ann Foundation, to be able to do training and skilled career cooking focused on school food. And I think I saw Teresa Spires on here a little bit earlier, who I actually got the chance to visit in St. Vrain in Colorado in the summer, who are doing culinary and agricultural education with the students in their high school vocational programs. And I think that those kind of programs are, they deserve to be elevated as policies, because that is the kind of solutions that people are looking for careers and to be able to support. And I think also, I heard a podcast that I was talking about, right, that was like hot labor summer. And I think that there's going to be more emphasis on labor and the people whose hands are bringing us this food than ever before, and rightfully so.
Thank you for that. I think we definitely have a good vision on the horizon, and we're headed in the right direction. And so I'm excited to see what else will come. I think next we're heading into a video about universal school meals. Oh, we did have some questions in the chat. I don't know if y'all had any answers, and I wanted to highlight those about ECE or getting people on board who may be apprehensive, especially school food directors or people in your immediate network.
I think we'll answer those directly in the chat, but thank you so much, Jasmine, for highlighting them.
Yeah, I would just say that Ryan did led an amazing webinar earlier this summer on how to host a site visit that can be used for any level of decision maker, whether it's like an administrator, parents that you want to influence, inviting a legislator themselves, state, federal, appointed official, to come and see what you're doing in your program.
That was a great advice, because when they smell that herb you grew, or they bite into that whatever you grew right there, it can definitely be impactful. So that was great advice, Karen.
Here at the National Farm to School Network, we know that farm to school is a triple win for kids, farmers, and communities. Because of that, we know that policies that expand healthy school meals benefit us all. Now is the time to invest in nourishing school meals for all kids and value everyone who gets it to their table. That's why we have launched the Who's at the Table campaign, advocating for school meals for all students that are aligned with our network's values around food served. Values like real career pathways in school cafeterias, opportunities for farmers to sell their harvest at fair prices to schools, food that goes beyond the calories kids need, trays full of delicious, culturally relevant meals. School meals can do it, if we commit to making it happen. Now is the time to call on your policymakers for nationwide nourishing school meals for all. Visit farmtoschool.org to join the movement. Here at the National Farm.
Thank you so much to our policy team. Please give a round of applause in the chat with reactions, etc. It is really important to hear how policy, what we're seeing there, and how policy affects all the work that we do in all of our communities. To everyone here, this is your NFSN policy team, and we and they want to connect with you to make sure that we are making these long-term changes, that we are making sure that funding at the federal and state level is being directed where it needs to go to really move our work forward. Thank you so much. I am going to pass it on now. We have a number of amazing individuals from various communities across the country who are going to share what's happening in their communities. And so very excited, I'm going to pass it on to Ji-Yoon Chan to introduce. Go ahead.
Thanks, David. Hi, everybody. My name is Ji-Yoon Chan, she, her pronouns. I'm the communications manager at National Farm to School Network. I'm currently located on the ancestral lands of the Munsee Lenape people, also known as New York City. And yeah, now I have the pleasure of introducing our lightning round community feature speakers. So we'll be hearing from 4 organizations who are each doing some incredible farm to school work on the ground. First up, we'll hear from the Meskwaki Settlement School, and then Cultivate Charlottesville, the Food Trust, and finally FRESHFARM. So to get us started, I will now pass it off to our Meskwaki Settlement School speakers to introduce themselves and talk about their farm to school programs.
Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone. This is Clyde Terrence, pronoun he, him. I'm the 612 principal at Meskwaki Settlement School in Tama, Iowa. We are in our second year of our farm to school program. Our originator was, if you look in the bottom right-hand picture, Christina Blackcloud turned in our farm to school grant. We will be applying for the second round and into the implementation stage. What we ended up doing is last year we used Earth Day, kindergarten through 12th grade, and we divided students up into garden prep, planting fruit trees, a smaller garden space for our elementary students. We did several taste tests throughout the school lunch program. We turned responsibilities as far as into our science curriculum at the middle school level, and then also at second grade. What we ended up doing to get community more involved with the harvest, we actually took quite a bit of our harvest down to our Meskwaki senior citizens, so they were able to taste the fresh vegetables and everything for their meals. We developed a Facebook, and we were really surprised that we have 1,500 followers right now. We included tribal entities from the initial stage, Red Earth Garden and Food Sovereignty. And then we also did a lot of exchanging of different garden seeds, so we helped each other. Hydroponics was more to have the kids see it every day. We ended up getting 3 hydroponic machines. And what we ended up doing is starting the seedlings, and then we transplanted the seedlings out into our garden. What we're looking at going into next year, we were granted by our tribal council another additional 2 to 3 acres of land. So we will be having a pretty big meeting coming up next week to decide what are we going to do with that extra additional 2 to 3 acres, and what are we going to do to get it more into our school and into our curriculum. Anything related? Any questions?
Thank you so much. I think, yeah, if anybody has questions, you can pop them into the chat and we'll try to get them answered or get you both connected. Yeah, if that's the end, I would like to pass it off to our next community feature speakers from Cultivate Charlottesville.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jordan Johnson. I'm the City Schoolyard Garden Program Director at Cultivate Charlottesville. And we have Shamara here as well. Shamara, can you do an introduction?
Hello, everyone. I'm the Farm to School Coordinator with Cultivate of Charlottesville. How are you doing today?
So Cultivate is a nonprofit that focuses on food equity in Charlottesville, Virginia. And we do that through 3 different programs. We have the City Schoolyard Garden Program, where Shamara and I work, which focuses on youth education in the Charlottesville City Schools with our schoolyard garden programming, and then also the Healthy School Meals Initiative, which is primarily where Shamara focuses her energy. We have our Urban Agriculture Collective, so we focus on community garden sites at low wealth and public and subsidized housing complexes across the city, with a free market day that happens a few times a week. And then we have our bigger picture systems change work, where we focus on larger systems and structure, recognizing the need to address lots of different components to address food equity in Charlottesville. So Shamara is going to talk a little bit about the Healthy School Meals Initiative that we're working in collaboration with Charlottesville City Schools. We've had a relationship for 13 years now. We've been in those schools, and this is kind of where we are with our 5-year Healthy School Meals Initiative.
Okay, everyone. I'm going to be speaking specifically about our 5-year Healthy School Foods plan and our 5 strategies we've created with the Nutrition Director to build out this plan. First, our equity through access. Increasing the percentage of students that participate in the meal program is one way to ensure equity and sustainability. We have gone into all CEP this year, so we have eliminated all of the student debt for our school district. Strategy 2 is staff and equipment, working with the school districts to make sure that we have the equipment needed for fresh from scratch training staff to prepare these items and menu that we give them. As well, we have had 4 professional trainings with Antoine Brinson, a professional chef in our area. With our nutrition staff, we've also have helped purchase grab and go refrigerators for our Charlottesville High School. Strategy 3 is fresh, scratch, and local, increasing fresh food from items to 40%. We have increased our fresh local items by like 30-40% here in our district, where they are offering fresh and local items throughout the monthly menus, let's say about average 4 or 5 times a month without our help. Also, strategy 4, my heart, prioritizing student voice. I have nutrition committees at the upper elementary school, also at the middle school and high school, where I go in and I talk to students around their lunches, prioritizing their student meals. I take this data collected back to the nutrition director. We talk about it and make up plans to see how can we have a common ground for the kids so they're happy. Just prioritizing their voice, making sure their voice is getting heard regarding their school meals, because they're the ones that's eating them. And strategy 5, youth choice and youth nutrition and education, building a foundation for students that understand that with what healthy means to them, not what healthy means to us. We allow our students to figure that out themselves, working through experimental garden education to understand more about the impacts of their food, investing in the youth leadership so they can be ready to step into student voice and choice. Is our mission here at Cultivate of Charlottesville. And I would also like to say, I love the fact that You all spoke about that nutrition staff is important. I was a nutrition manager for 4 years for my district, so I know firsthand how important it is for the nutrition staff to be heard, as well as the children. And does anybody have any questions for us today?
I just answered one of the questions in the chat that was, is Charlottesville City Schools paying for the nutrition training program? We got a 2-year USDA Farm to School grant to support that initiative. And then the following year, we ended up splitting the costs. So Cultivate paid for half and Charlottesville City Schools paid for the other half. And we're hoping that next year they pay for the whole thing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So next, I'd like to pass it off to our speaker from the Food Trust.
Hi, happy Farm to School Month, everyone. My name is Katie Balazis. I serve as the Associate Director of our Farm to School programs at the Food Trust. And the Food Trust is a nonprofit. We're based in Philadelphia, and our mission is all about making sure that everyone that is in our communities have access to delicious, nutritious foods. And like many of you, a lot of us do that through Farm to School. So I also want to mention the Food Trust coordinates the Pennsylvania Farm to School Network, and that is led by my colleague, Sam Gibb. And I have a couple of resources I'll share about that at the end. But one thing that I wanted to share about today that the Food Trust is really excited and passionate about is the Healthy Kindergarten Initiative. So right now, this initiative is primarily funded through Pennsylvania SNAP Ed, but it was actually developed almost 2 decades ago by the Food Trust. And at one point, it even informed some of the public funding available in Pennsylvania way back in 2007 to carry out farm to school initiatives. So it's been around for a long time, but obviously it's gone through many iterations and modifications since its development. And then we also created a new sort of piece of the program that I'm going to share about in just a second. But the basic framework of it, so it's an intensive program for kindergartners. It includes a lesson every week that teachers integrate into their curriculum, and lessons are based on nutrition and growing food and how weather affects the food supply, and making sure that family traditions are incorporated into meals. So lots and lots of different topics conducive for 5-year-olds. And each lesson is paired with a fresh fruit or vegetable taste test. So throughout the year, children usually taste around 36 to 40 different fruits and vegetables. Students also participate in gardening. A lot of times our educators will harvest what they grow at the school and cook and pair those lessons with, or those foods with some of the lessons. And we also connect the schools to farmers to host on-site field trips, to bring farmers into the classroom. And we're hoping to create sort of an adopt a farmer program, so our kindergarten classrooms can really get to know their local farmer in their community. But a key component of the program is caregiver engagement. So I think all of us know that parents can be really powerful partners, really reinforce all of this different messaging and encourage kids to try new fruits and vegetables. So during the pandemic, I think a lot of us really experienced challenges with staying connected to school families. So we created a new initiative paired with the KI program called Cooking Beyond the Classroom. So it's a 4-week cooking series, and families and caregivers are provided with a bag of recipe ingredients. Oftentimes, some of these ingredients are procured locally. In some of our districts, students have planted the ingredients at farms that they've worked with, and they've harvested those, put them in the recipe bags. And we also provide families with cooking utensils and recipe books that have tips on how kids can cook with them, and so that they feel confident in the kitchen. And we carry out this series, and all of it is very family focused. And last year we actually did an evaluation, and we were really excited about some of the results and found that not only are parents feeding their kids more fresh fruits and vegetables and encouraging them to try new fruits and vegetables, but this program also increases family bonding. So parents reported eating with their children during meal times more often, also inviting their kids to help them cook. So There was a lot of awesome outcomes from this program, and we would love to share more with anyone who's looking for more nutrition and agriculture to incorporate into their classroom. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention there are a couple things in the chat about the Pennsylvania Farm to School Network that's not totally related to this, but more generally about Farm to School. There are a few links. We have some virtual farm tours to please check out. We also have an open house coming in December, and we'll be focusing on local food purchasing incentives and how the Food Trust is carrying out a pilot to bring more nutritious foods into schools. So feel free to check that out. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or you can email me. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for sharing. And so now I'll pass it to our last speaker from FRESHFARM.
Hi, can you all hear me? Can you see me? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jen Mampara. I'm the Director of Education at FRESHFARM, and I'm really happy to be here today. I'm here to just kind of give you an overview of our Footprints program, and then let you know about the resources we have available for anyone to access. So we can go to I didn't get the one slide memo, so I have a few different slides, but this is a quick overview of our organization. I oversee our education program, which is based in schools, but we also we work on to build a more resilient Mid-Atlantic food system through farmers markets and food access programs and nutrition incentive programs. You can go to the next. Our school-based program is called Footprints, and we've been running it for since 2009. This year, we're working with 21 DC public schools all across Washington, DC. We have 30 teachers on staff who are embedded in the public schools, and they're really there functioning as staff members in the school who provide food education similar to how they have art or music or PE. Our schools have food teachers in them. We're expecting this year to teach almost 3,000 Footprint sessions and work with about 7,600 kids in preschool through 5th grade. There's kind of 3 core elements of our program. One is that we help schools establish teaching kitchens. These are 2 that are like fully modernized, developed teaching kitchens, which we have at about 8 of our 21 schools, but we also make sure that we have a classroom that we outfit as a kitchen. So one is the indoor space. The next slide is the outdoor space, which is school gardens. We work to make sure that all of our schools have really flourishing, accessible gardens that are irrigated so that they produce really well year round. And then the next slide is the third really important element of our program is teachers. Our model is to build a workforce of food educators that are in our public schools. This group of people that you see here is the reason this program is having such a big impact in Washington, DC. They're all in schools 2 to 3 days. They're in each of our partner schools 2 to 3 days a week, running programming where each classroom gets to participate for about 2 hours every month in kind of an in-school field trip, which is a Footprint session at their school. And is there one more slide? Or is that, no, there's not. Okay, so the thing I wanted to let everybody know about are the resources on our website. We have a curriculum that we developed. Great, it's there in the chat. We have a curriculum that we developed over 10 years that is for preschool to 5th graders and actually is very easily adaptable for older students. There's a number of resources you can use to help you plan to use the curriculum. There's a scope and sequence for each lesson through all the grades. There's a themes guide. The lessons are very extensive and are full of lots of different resources you can pull from. Each of the 63 lessons could really be 4 or 5 or 6 different lessons, and it's on its own. There's also a set of videos that are designed to support the lessons and also to help teach cooking skills. And so there's a lot there. I really encourage you to go and use it. It's free for anybody to use. We just ask that you register with your email address. And we'd just love to have more people utilizing those resources. You know, we're really trying to use Washington, D.C. as a model for the impact that experiential food education can have when it is sustained. We just think that kids really need to build positive experiences and memories with nutritious food and with the natural world, and that connecting it to the meal program and including students' family really has the power to transform the next generation's relationship to personal and planetary health. And I think that the work that all of us are doing, we're really working to bridge the gap between like our classrooms and where our farmers are growing food, and between academic goals of the U.S. Department of Education and the nutrition and health goals of the USDA and the Health and Human Services. And so just really want to say I'm glad everybody's here talking, and that I want us to continue to advocate for sufficient resources to support all the programming that this group of people has started so that it is sustainable and can continue. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Jen, and to all of our speakers. It's so great to be able to highlight all of your great work that's happening on the ground. Jen, it looks like you did have a question in the chat from Rebecca, if you're able to answer, but yeah, now I'll pass it to, I believe, Jessica for our closing statement.
Thanks, June, and thanks to everybody for making it this far. My name is Jessica Gudmundson. I am the interim co-executive director for the National Farm to School Network. My pronouns are she, her, and I am coming to you from ancestral Meskwaki land, now known as Atlanta, Georgia. One thing we love to practice at NFSN is acknowledgement and thanks for our collective efforts. Farm to School and ECE is not the work of just one person or organization, but a movement of champions across the United States. And so I want to extend my deep gratitude to all of you for making time to join us today and for the work that you are doing in your communities. You are an important part of this movement. Thank you to our speakers, including our keynote speaker, Qiana, and the people at Grodat Farm for their work engaging youth in food. And thank you to our staff and our board and our partners for their contributions in making this meeting a success. I also want to take a minute to thank our sponsors for their commitment and investment in improving the lives of children, farmers, and communities. Sponsors for today's meeting include CoBank, Mushrooms in Schools, Shelburne Farms Institute for Sustainable Schools, National Co-op of Grocers, and the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. This year's theme for National Farm to School Month, which you've heard several times today, is rooted in community, growing stronger together. We chose this theme because strong relationships are essential to making farm to school and early care and education activities a success. As Karen mentioned earlier, just yesterday, the Senate introduced the bipartisan Farm to School Act of 2023, which can permanently expand funding for the Patrick Leahy Farm to School Grant Program. Thanks to the work of advocates, many of whom are in this meeting today, the Farm to School Grant Program was established 10 years ago. This bill will build on 10 years of success and help make funding for Farm to School and ECE available to more communities across the nation. When we work together and ensure that all voices are included in that work, we have the collective power to make lasting change in the daily lives of people through opportunities like the Farm to School Act. If you haven't done so already, I encourage you to sign up at your organization as a partner of National Farm to School Network, or sign up yourself as a member. Partners have access to peer learning opportunities that improve your ability to implement successful Farm to School and ECE programs. Partners have a voice in what we do here at NFSN, and partners are elevated as leaders in this movement, as you've seen here today. If your organization is already a partner, or if you're unable to sign up right now, or if you're an individual, I encourage you to sign up as a member to stay connected and engaged with this movement. You'll be the first to get updates on exciting opportunities, such as the return of the National Farm to Cafeteria Conference, which is coming in spring 2025. I want to leave all of you with NFSN's call to action. Together, we are working towards 100% of communities holding power in a racially just food system. And we're doing this by working at the intersection of racial equity, health equity, environmental and climate justice, economic justice, workers' rights, and animal welfare. I hope you are inspired to grow your Farm to School and ECE efforts. I hope that you reach out to people in your community, especially people that maybe you have not previously connected with, And we are here to support you in those efforts and to build collective action with community at the center. Happy Farm to School Month, everybody. Thank you so much.